Double P podcast. Double P.
What I like to call
Double P.
What I like to call
Double P podcast.
Welcome to the Double P Podcast Network. My name's Bubba. You can find me on Twitter at Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM. So FITTENTRIM at Fit and Trim on Twitter. Today I'll be reviewing the second season of The Last Kingdom, a BBC and now for the second season, a Netflix-produced show as well, based on a set of great books by author Bernard Cornwell about the Viking invasion of what we now know as England back in the 19th century. These are fictional books that take place in real history, fictitious history, if you will. And because I've read the books and because I've watched both seasons, I do these solo podcasts. There's nobody here but me. Aww. And I'm going to get you through it. Why did I have to do this podcast? Why did I have to talk to you today about The Last Kingdom? It's not just because I read the books, but it's also because destiny is all. Just a word right here at the top about the Double P Podcast Network, the thing you're listening to right now. We're really just a bunch of friends here who live in Los Angeles, who like hanging out and talking about various things. One of the things that's happened is when we were talking about TVs, we got tricked into doing specific podcasts. We cover such TV shows as Game of Thrones, Twin Peaks, The Strain, Ash vs. Evil Dead, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and a bunch of others. And so if you want to find out about all our shows, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/Double P Podcast. That's the word double, the letter P, the word podcast, plural. Facebook.com/Double P Podcast. You can find out about all the crazy things we talk about, books, movies, concerts, entertainment, industry events we attend here in Los Angeles. Go to Facebook.com and check it out. Once again, it is just me, Bubba, at Fit and Trim, reviewing the second series of The Last Kingdom, which has now aired or been released on Netflix here in the United States. I'm compelled to watch these, as I mentioned earlier, because I read the first 7 books in Bernard Cornwell's series. Now, this series, I can only refer to it as a series. Why? Because in Cornwell's native United Kingdom, it's known as the Warrior Chronicles. Uhtred is a warrior. For whatever reasons, here in the United States, this book series is known as the Saxon series. Either way, I've read the first 7 in this book series, which certainly has 8, 9. It's going to keep growing. Cornwell is a prolific writer. He's a really good writer, but he just keeps going and going and going. If there's a battle in history that he wants to put his protagonist, Uhtred of Beddenburg, in, he'll put him there. Why is Uhtred going to end up there? Destiny is all. When I look at these first 7 books that I've read by Cornwell in the series, once again, generally I love them. They're cracking good yarns based around this wonderful, sarcastic, sour protagonist, Uhtred of Beddenburg, a young Northumbrian lord who was kidnapped by Danish invaders as a boy. He grew up to love his invaders and take the Danes' values and the Danes' gods, but still in his heart, because where he was born and because he is the quote-unquote Lord of Beddenburg, even if he has been deposed by his uncle, he is tied to England. He's English, or what would become known as English. And so Uhtred is a great character in the book series, and he's becoming one on the show. The first season, the first series, as they say, of The Last Kingdom, I rated 7 out of 10. For the second season, I'm going to boost it up one. I'm going to rate it 8 triple Bs out of 10. What's triple B, you may be asking yourself? And if you've listened to a bunch of our podcasts, you know I'm waiting for you to ask triple Bs. Well, just so you know, triple Bs is a phrase, you don't have a lot of time. There's a character limit on Twitter. So a lot of times I just say triple B when I'm referring to bickering Beddenburg badass. And that's what Uhtred is. So this second season, it feels like they spent a bit more money, the production values, while still not able to match the incredible world that Cornwell creates in his book series. They go to a lot of places. They give them each unique looks in this 8-episode second series. And I was really impressed. I think, whoa, these guys have done a darn good job. It still has some faults, and to be completely honest, as I reviewed the second season and I talk about those faults, it's going to sound an awful lot like what I mentioned were the faults in the first season. But I'll get to those in a second. The television adaptation, just in case you haven't read the books, it is generally faithful to the spirit and in a lot of ways the stories of the books. It just trims them down, probably for budgetary reasons, but also for, I guess, a story choice into a lean, mean television show. Earlier I mentioned that I reviewed the first season of The Last Kingdom. It's here on the Double P Podcast Network feed, so just look deeper into the feed and you'll see it. I've mentioned my book reading so many times that, yes, you can understand that my score is obviously burdened by my book reading knowledge. I love this bickering Benberg badass Uhtred, but I still feel, as I mentioned when I reviewed the first season, that the character came more alive on the page than he did on the show, even though I'm tending to grow to like the actor and like the character in the show. These 8 episodes of the second season are based on books 3, which is entitled The Lords of the North, and book 4, Sword Song, in Cornwell's series. I'm on Goodreads, if you use that book reading, bookophile, novelophile site online. I'm on that as Fit and Trim as well. And I thought I'd go ahead and get out of the way my reviews of these 2 books, which build up the second season. The Lords of the North, I gave 3 stars out of 5. And I wrote, without question, The Lords of the North was the weakest of the first 3 books in the Saxon Tales and the Saxon Chronicles. The cruel twists of fate that our hero Uhtred finds himself stuck in the middle section of the novel, is just a long slog to get through. However, Uhtred is a warrior, and his revenge-filled battles at the end of the story bring my rating up to 3 stars. So, obviously, you may have realized that it's the first 4 episodes of Season 2 that are taken from that third novel, Lords of the North. And in that novel, the reason why I only gave it 3 out of 5 stars is because Uhtred was a slave for a long time. I believe it was 2 years in the book series, while on the show it comes across like it was just 1 season. Now, admittedly, being a slave, just 1 season is incredibly rough, but the show made it feel like that happened much quicker. The second 4 episodes of this second series is based around the 4th book, Sword Song. I gave that 4 stars on Goodreads, and I wrote, the plot turns in unexpected and, at times, unwelcome directions, but it doesn't matter. If you've read the book series to this point, you've grown to love the characters, whether it's hard-headed hero Uhtred, sour King Alfred, quippy brother Pyrlig, and all the rest. And they're in fine form in these adventures around London, as how he writes it, and how apparently the town of London, the city of London, the world epicenter of London, was written and described back in the 9th century. I've mentioned it before, I'm just going to mention it again. I had problems with that first series pacing. Cramming 2 novels into 8 hours of television can sometimes get very rough. Now you might say, now, Bubba, come on. People will take a novel and turn that into an only 2-hour movie. They took a really fun, pulpy novel like Jurassic Park and turned that into a 2-hour movie, and it was a great 2-hour movie. How can I complain that so far through 2 seasons, they're taking 1 book and giving it 4 hours of TV and then moving on? Well, Cornwell is creating incredible worlds. He's really building up the worlds and all the factions, and it's just, to be completely honest, quite complex. He's also throwing lots of characters at the readers in all these books, and they recur, so you get to know them over time, but he's throwing them at you. Earlier I had mentioned that in the 3rd book, Uhtred is a slave for 2 years, and in that time that Uhtred is a slave for 2 years, he meets a new companion, new friend who's going to travel through with Uhtred for many adventures to come, a character by the name of Finan. And on the page, because Uhtred is a slave so long and they're just so darn many pages, they really flesh out this new character. Uhtred has so many buddies. He has so many pals. To give you an example, he has Sithtric, he has Steapa, he has Clappa, he has Father Pyrlig, and now he has Finan. I mean, he's just got so many pals who are all variations of a good warrior, like Uhtred is. And yet, to make them unique, you have to build them up and give them some time. Finan, because his character is from Ireland, he's Irish, they give him that accent, and the show gives him a couple quick, quippy lines. But I wouldn't be surprised if television audiences really don't know who this guy is, and it's more like he's just another member of Uhtred's merry men. Uhtred being his own Robin Hood, and he's got his own merry men. But in Robin Hood, you knew Little John, you knew Father Tuck, you knew Alan O'Dale, you knew like other characters enough to where, okay, I get the character. While here, because once again, all these band of misfits are so similar. There's Sithtric. Well, he used to be a Viking, and he came to Uhtred because he likes Uhtred. Then there's Steapa. Steapa's a badass warrior, but he's a Christian who really serves Alfred. Even though he likes Uhtred, he serves Alfred. Then you've got Clappa, yet another Viking who's going to like him. You got Father Pyrlig, who is a badass warrior, and yet he's also a monk. Then you've got Finan, who's a badass warrior, but he's Irish, and he's got more sardonic humor. Like, you've got to separate these characters. And sadly, in these hours, you just can't build them up all enough. And so the pacing is still a problem, but I'll say for season 2, I feel like I've gotten used to it. Okay, this is the pace it's going to move in. It's going to be crunched, and you just have to get used to it. And so, once again, let's just focus on this pacing problem before I go further. Uhtred, when he is a slave for 2 years, I gave it kind of a negative review, only 3 out of 5. I still liked it, but only 3 out of 5 because it just dragged on the page. But by dragging it on and on, Uhtred did have like mini adventures within the 2 years of being a slave, which I kind of enjoy. Like, ooh, this mini adventure is fun. This one, please, end it so it could hurry up. But the general thought process is that as a book reader, you know Uhtred can't stay a slave forever because he has these outstanding issues that he's got to deal with. He's got all these antagonists who we've bothered learning about, and so it's not like Cornwell was just going to leave him alone. Uhtred had to be freed and get back to him, and so that did get a bit frustrating. The TV show didn't give us much time to meet Uhtred's fellow slave Finan, but by having Uhtred only be a slave for really a single episode, we get the point and it moves on. And so that's a positive thing about the pace and, making it a lean, mean television series. And I want to give the show credit. It does a great job of showing the toil and pain that our main hero, our protagonist Uhtred, goes through on that journey. And so that's one point where I feel tightening it up. Yes, we lost Finan a bit, but it still conveyed the main things about our main character, the main journey he goes on emotionally and physically and all of that, and why he could be so frustrated that he would later kill a holy man. Uhtred, following the Danish gods, he probably doesn't care too much about a holy man, even though his good friend from childhood, or he was a child, Father Beocca, was an adult, but the friend he's known all his life, Father Beocca, and Steapa, and Father Pyrlig, he's okay with some Christians as long as they don't force their message on him too much. I want to explore the characterization on the show in more detail later, but we've always got to start when you have a show in a book series with such a central focus, a lead character, a main protagonist, Uhtred, and the actor who portrays him, Alexander Dreymon. And I was tough on him a bit in the first season, mainly because of my double B, book reader bias. He wasn't like the character on the page. He wasn't a narrator explaining these tales. He didn't have the ability to, in a situation, be angry, frustrated. And yet, because he was a narrator, he could look back and say things like, boy, I was really stupid to get so angry. And so you have this great perspective on the character, and you realize Uhtred himself realizes that, not after the fact, that he was real dumb in this one thing. And Uhtred on the page is just very comical. Now, the one negative thing about the book, about Uhtred being this narrator looking back on his life and telling you this story, is that the reader doesn't have the fear of death. If Uhtred's narrating this tale, you know whatever jam he's going to get into in the book, he's going to live because he's the narrator. And so the TV show can up that. The TV show can give you that fear of death, or I should say could give you that fear of death about the character. But I really don't think TV viewers are ever afraid that he's going to die. TV viewers are hip enough to know, okay, Uhtred's the hero of the show. He's not going to die. This isn't Game of Thrones Season 1. We can trust that Uhtred will be there forever. But once again, Uhtred on the page just has such likability because he's able to point out his own foils, his own mistakes. And actor Alexander Dreymon has to express some of these things at the same time. He can't quite pull off the world weariness or even the comedy that comes from the character in the book. But once again, he's grown on me, and he's always been able to portray Uhtred's righteous fury. You know, when Uhtred gets screwed over, which is, spoiler alert, what the whole series seems to be about constantly, this actor, he's quite effective in showing that anger and that rage in his face. He's also was quite effective on the opposite spectrum when he was broken down as a slave. I really thought he did a very excellent job in getting that across. Now, unlike Series 1, Series 2, I think, failed with our second character a bit, and that is the character who is the real main antagonist / driving force of everything, and that is King Alfred. King Alfred, and you saw it in the second half of Series 2, King Alfred is this bizarre kind of love-hate relationship with Uhtred, and it's not really even love, it's more like hate-dependency relationship with Alfred. This is really done excellently on the page. And I thought in Season 1 they did it pretty well, but in Season 2 there is this kind of whiplash. Every viewer knows, and sure enough, King Alfred knows himself, that he needs this warrior. He needs this evil Uhtred of Beddenburg to help him, or he's always going to be screwed. Yet, this guy isn't a Christian. He's always looking out for himself. He's sworn to you, but you're kind of a low priority on this swearing. And so I think they really stranded actor David Dawson, who once again I thought did a really good job in the first season, as King Alfred in the second season, of not building up his turn. So in the second book and in the second half of this second season, Alfred has to really be like, I don't trust Uhtred. What's Uhtred doing? And the show just feels like whiplash. They didn't build up that distrust that should have been in Alfred all along. If they had somehow allowed that in the first 4 episodes, then when King Alfred really treats Uhtred terribly, I think that would have been a bit better. I love the portrayal David Dawson gives him. He is such a pious jerk who you actually like, which I think is a great way to describe the character in the book. But I thought the character work, just from kind of the pacing of the second season, didn't do as well. Another actor that I really want to give a shout out to is, and I'm going to mispronounce it, it's Eva Berthisel. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She plays Hild, the, for lack of a better word, fighting nun on the show. She was in the first season, and she's back in the second season. And when you have so many members of Uhtred's merry men, I think you really have to stand out a bit. And yes, maybe it's a bit easier for her because she's one of the women on these journeys. Yet I think she does a really good job of making Hild, this character who does have a deep faith but isn't afraid to kick a little tush as well as she can. I really think they've made a good job of her standing out and showing her character's struggle with the yin and yang of the violence and the faith, which I thought really, really worked well. Someone who did a great job in the first season, but I think they've had trouble, and I think this actually might have happened, if any viewers jumped in on the second season. Another thing that I think they might have been confused about is the character of Aethelwold. And this is a character who's a great pain in the tush on the page, and I think he's actually very well portrayed by actor Harry McEntire. I think he's very well portrayed by Harry McEntire, the actor. But the one thing the show didn't really do is they didn't get new viewers up to speed on, hey, Aethelwold should be the rightful king. He was the king's son. The king died. The king's brother, Prince Alfred, usurped the throne, pretty much stole the kingdom from Aethelwold. And so Aethelwold, while being a drunk, while being surly about this birthright stole from him, is a tricky character to play because he's also, quote-unquote, on the good guy's side. And I think this actor does a good job. I'm not sure, once again, new viewers we might be able to truly pick up all of his motivations. Heck, if they didn't watch the first season, and specifically the first episode, how can they really pick up Uhtred's motivation? But it's just another one that I liked more in the first season, and in the second season, I think they had a bit of trouble getting across. The final actor I want to point out, and it's just because it's a trickier role, and I think they've done some, how do I say it politely? I think they've done some reworking of her character, is Eliza Butterworth, who plays Aelswith, a.k.a. King Alfred's queen. In the book, she is just a scolding, negative, piece of work, for lack of a better word. And because there's so few female characters who really get rounded out in the book or in the show, she could have easily been one note, meaning she is a devout Christian, and anything about this evil Danish, Dane god supporting Uhtred, she hates. But in this second season, they've kind of turned the characters' they've turned the character's kind of perspective on Uhtred around to where she sees his value, which is interesting. Very interesting, depending how tightly the show follows the books going on in future seasons. What I would call my favorite moment of Season 2, my favorite bit of destiny is all, the thing that earns that destiny, my favorite moment in the 8 episodes is in Episode 4, a.k.a. the end of The Lords of the North, my least favorite of the first 4 books. But it's Uhtred has been playing this, evil. Uhtred has been masquerading as this god. Hey, I'm going to put on this skull, and I'm going to be this undead warrior sent by Odin to avenge you, and I'll get you, and revenge on you killing the guy who ended up kidnapping me when I was a boy, who I grew to love. And so in Episode 4, that pays off. They invade Donoughue. They get in there. Uhtred's sister and Ragnar, the younger sister, she frees, and yet she has some agency in that she sicks these dogs on these bastards. This is one thing that the books do so well, is they make you hate these people so much, and you want their comeuppance. And when she sicked those dogs on her evil captors, that was a great feeling of like, hell yeah, let's do it. Good work, Uhtred and team. Way to go. My arsling moment of Season 2 is going to have to go to something which just broke my heart a bit, that the show couldn't do because of budgetary reasons. The battle in London, or London, however Cornwell writes it and how it was written back then, the Battle of London in the books was really a highlight. It was like, holy smokes, here we go. Alfred's bastard son has some heroic moments in it, which is kind of fun. And it really showed how, for lack of a better word, medieval warriors would fight in this abandoned city that the Romans left behind London. Cornwell really makes it come alive on the page. Once again, it feels like the show got a production budget bump in Season 2 and really made things look nice. But having said that, they could only do so much with London. It really looked like London was just a couple of turns in areas, like a courtyard and a walkway around the courtyard, and then a kind of a main area of it. 3 bits of London. And they did a good job with it, but they couldn't make this great battle. And so they didn't even try the battle as it plays out in the books. And so because I love that so much in the books, it's unfair to say, okay, the show doesn't have a budget to pull it off. But it did break my heart, and that's my arsling moment of Season 2. You can write me on Twitter. Once again, I'm Bubba at Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM at Fit and Trim on Twitter. Or go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/P Podcast, and tell me your Destiny is All highlight of Season 2 and your arsling moment, the worst moment that comes up in Season 2. Looking forward, if The television show gets renewed for a third series and keeps the pace it's currently doing, where the 8 episodes are based on 2 books. The next 2 books would be The Burning Land, which is Saxon Stories number 5, and Death of Kings, which is Saxon Story number 6. These 2 are probably some of my least favorite books in the series, and specifically the 5th book, The Burning Land, is the one I liked the least. In that review, I talked about how it felt like there were just a bunch of historical battles that took place in this general time period that Cornwell wanted to write about, so he kind of had to come up with contrived reasons to throw his hero Uhtred at all of them. That said, the 7th book, the last one I've read so far in the series, The Pagan Lord, I really liked a lot. I gave that 4 stars out of 5, and so theoretically, Season 4 might be really good. I've stopped at 7, even though there are currently 10 books in the series, and I haven't looked. You would feel Cornwell might want to keep going. If I could wish for anything moving forward into Season 3, it'd be that the show be slightly less faithful to the books. Now, I mentioned a lot of times for budgetary reason, they're cutting story and incidents out, and big battles out, and big production design things out. But I kind of wish, as I mentioned earlier, where there's so many characters and they're not all getting their due, I kind of wish that the show would just accept that and then cut some of the characters or combine them and let existing characters do some of the things that happen in later stories. Once again, write me and tell me what you want to see. Obviously, if you've listened this far into a podcast about The Last Kingdom, I'm going to assume you've watched it. I'm going to assume you enjoy it. Maybe you've read the books, maybe you haven't. Tell me and let me know what you think. This is a big week for us. Currently, we're doing podcasts about Twin Peaks, which is currently airing here in 2017. Plus, we're going to do a podcast looking at trailers for shows. We do one about the new Game of Thrones Season 7 trailer, as well as a podcast about The Strain, the Sturgoy. They just released a trailer for Season 4 of The Strain, so we're going to be doing podcasts looking at those 2 trailers, as well as recapping and describing our feelings about the new Showtime series, Twin Peaks: The Return, a.k.a. Twin Peaks Season 3. Once again, to find out about all our stuff, go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/double-P podcast. That's the word double, the single letter P, the word podcast, plural, facebook.com/double-P podcast. And once again, hit me up on Twitter and tell me what you think. Because the only reason why we do these podcasts, we certainly don't have any ads. Oh, I'm so sad. Why can't I get any ads, Uhtred? Destiny is all. Oh, great. Thanks. So we're doing it really to just interact and meet people like you and have fun talking about shows we enjoy. So please give us written reviews on iTunes. Talk to us on Facebook and Twitter. We can't wait to see you. And until next time, remember Uhtred's parting words. You're an arsling.
This is going to be a Double P podcast. Double P?